Heyo, and welcome to Today, where I'm going to be talking about the future of Canada and where it is going, where it might go, and what parts all play into where it all may going, and where all this cacophony that is happening as of late might potentially land us into. Now, to dive in, you've probably realized, probably have recognized, but Canada did not exactly win.
The results from the Canadian election are in, and the Conservatives lost.
Conservatives lost. And now, while I could sit here and portray to you guys a glum and gloomy future for Canada, I would rather look towards the future rather than look to what is not. Because what is currently is that Mark Carney is in. I could continue to sit here and be gloomy about how he's in, how Canada is going to probably end up not being a safe place to live. I'll say that. And I could do that. But I decide to look at all of this and take a step back and get a little bit of perspective on this entire situation, on how it all might fold, how it all might come together, and what that means for you. And when I look back, this whole entire thing seems a little bit like the story of Jonah. Jonah in the Big Fish, to be more exact. And what has happened is Many Canadians in our heart and soul were told, do not vote for Mark Carney. Do not do that. And yet we as a collective have done that. We've went against what we were told. That is to say, we are now heading towards the boat. We're heading towards getting on that boat and then setting sail for the waters, towards a direction that we were not told to go. At some point, the water is going to become very rocky for Canada. So rocky, in fact, that a separation might happen of this boat we are all on. I'm going to read this post from Keith Wilson. They say, breaking. Premier Smith unveils major updates to the Citizen Initiative Act. Now only 177,000 signatures are needed to trigger a referendum on Alberta's independence, down from 600,000. Plus, the signature collection period extends from 90 to 120 days. It is blatantly obvious to me where this might go. And as I stated, the waters are going to become very rocky before the waters start settling down. But what happens when the water settles down? Canada gives in. The main point I'm saying here is, either way, Canada is giving in. It will happen, or Canada will break. There's not exactly a if or and. There's no option in between those two things. Tell me what you're thinking of that down below. But what I think is really the linchpin in this point of Canada becoming very rocky and eventually breaking, or going along with the main story here, is Trump. Many conservatives, even some liberals, have stated that it was in fact Trump who turned the tides of the entire election by him blathering on with his loud mouth. And even Trump agrees with that.
Trump says, until I came along, remember, the Conservative was leading by 25 points. Parker says it's true. Then, I was disliked by enough of the Canadians that I've thrown the election into a close call, right? I don't even know if it's a close call. But the Conservative, they didn't like Governor Trudeau too much. And I would call him Governor Trudeau, but he wasn't fond of that. That is, my friends, Donald Trump, the man himself, saying this in the interview, that Canada flipped because of him.
Trump agrees, Conservatives agree, And I most certainly am one of the people who also agree that Trump changed the election. What had happened is Trump went on with his big mouth, blabbing on, saying 51st state. And that made a lot of Canadians, prideful, and clutch their pearls and say, Mark Carney is the person who will save us from this, because they oh so badly did not want to become the 51st state, and Pierre Poilievre wasn't sounding too boastful against Trudeau, or against Trump, whereas Mark Carney was. And so what happened is a lot of Canadians chose the thing that they should not have chose. And what that has done is cause a lot of separation talk from Alberta. And I would say, just to dive a little bit into this, but then we're going to go back, going to take a step back afterwards, but I would say right about now would be just the right time for Trump to do a little bit of, put a little oil on this so that Alberta gets much more lubricated from Canada. A little bit more disconnected, per se. I don't know if this idiom's working or if you understand what I'm saying, but the point is, to take a step back, I'm pretty sure that this is exactly what Trump wanted. Exactly what Trump wanted. Because now, once again, there's a huge separation movement that is happening in Alberta. And along with Daniel Smith lowering the amount of votes that are needed, there is probably going to be a separation. That is most definitely going to be something that happens. I don't see how it wouldn't happen. Because, once again, as it is, we have gotten onto the boat. We have went against the correct thought of not voting Mark Carney. We have voted for him in. The water is going to get rocky. It is going to get rocky before it gets calm. And things are just heating up. It is just heating up right now. I can almost rest assured it is just heating up right now. Because we're still in talks. Things haven't really been moved forward other than talks. And so, what I see, Canada will either break or it will go along with Trump. Those are the only two options. And as it is seeming, with how prideful a lot of Canadians are about their oh-so-dear heritage, which, I understand being prideful of being Canadian. I get that. But being so prideful as to condemn your youth, that's foolish at that rate. Because you need the youth to create more youth. If you don't have the youth because they can't afford anything, then your population is a dead end. So, being so prideful as to vote for the loudest mouth against what you want to not be a part, which is Trump, and Mark Carney is the loudest mouth against Trump. Being so prideful as to vote for that, which is clearly the incorrect choice for Canada's prosperity, that is, in my opinion, just creating more division. Which, as I see them, Canada will break before it gives in. Canada, in this scenario of Canada being Jonah's gonna stay on the boat. The boat is going to break, and then Jonah will fall in. And, probably still be swallowed up by fish and taken elsewhere. But, we don't know about that part of the story, because the only part of the story we know of is that Jonah jumped into the water. But the point is, Alberta, by the end of this, I foresee that Alberta will separate. I don't see how a different message could be spun. I don't get it. CTV News has came out saying, Alberta separation unlikely, experts say. But, I mean, the same question goes, who is the expert? Do we know them? What are they an expert in? We don't know that as well. They're just the expert. And so it just means a whole bunch of nothing. I do truly believe that by the end of... What do I mean by the end of? I would say what is going to happen is Trump is probably going to weigh a little bit of leverage to incentivize Alberta to join them, and that is probably going to happen. And then from there on, well, hopefully Manitoba's included on being part of the separation. I mean, I've been seeing a lot of X posts and all that, and so maybe Canada could, or maybe Manitoba could be part of that, but I mean, that's just wishful thinking at this rate. Because if Alberta moves, that is going to incur a lot more levying power from Trump to just take over the rest of Canada. That is how I see things shaping up. Mark Carney is by far the greatest gift that Liberals have handed him. By far the greatest gift that they have handed Trump is to vote in Mark Carney, because Mark Carney is doing nothing but causing Canada to want to separate even more, which is just going to provide a perfect amount of potential, a perfect amount of potential for Alberta to want to split. And from that point on, it won't be difficult to get the other parts of Western Canada to want to split as well, because Alberta is, I mean, forget about the materials, is also a transportation sector between British Columbia and the rest of Canada. How many, like, let's say there is a border created between Alberta and the other, let's say Alberta leaves, becomes part of America, and then America decides to put, not decides, but will put a wall around Alberta. That is just going to create a huge transportation nightmare for British Columbia to the eastern side of Canada. So then British Columbia would probably be the next to fall. And from that point on, that would be just a lot of money that would no longer reach the other side of Canada. And one of Manitoba's greatest sector from here is the transportation fact, because we have a lot of transportation go through Canada, or through Manitoba, specifically Manitoba. And without that transportation, because Alberta has been taken over and then British Columbia has been taken over, Manitoba probably wouldn't be too far off. And I mean, Saskatchewan, they're already pretty conservative, so they'd probably be on the tail behind Alberta, so they wouldn't be too much to convince. But then from that point on, what else does Manitoba really have to stay with the rest of Canada? Because let's be real here, Manitoba is given a hefty amount of money because of the fact that we are a transportation sector. If it isn't for Manitoba, Canada for the most part breaks down entirely. They'd spend a lot more money on transportation if it wasn't for Manitoba being part of Canada. But maybe that's just how I see it. Maybe I'm a complete fool. Maybe I'm speaking out of my tush. Maybe I am loose on the marbles. But I guess tell me what you're thinking down below on that, because this is where I'm gonna leave this off. I don't know what I'm gonna be talking about in the next video, but I might switch things up depending on how I see things going forward. Maybe it'll be more of this, actually, talking about the future of Canada. Maybe that'll be something I talk about, but either way, I hope you're there to see it. And also, once again, on the road to 1,000 subscribers, so I would greatly appreciate if you joined the channel to getting to that point. It'd be very, very heartwarming for me to reach that at some point. But either way, I hope to see you in the next video. But until then, I hope that you have a good one.